Hello, everyone. I'm Adriano Ercolani for Cinema Daily US. I'm here with Chris Weitz and Paul Weitz, showrunners, producers of the new Apple TV series, Murderbot. My first question for you is about the adaptation. The series is based on All Systems Red, the first book of the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. So I was wondering, what made you think, okay, this is gonna be our new adaptation? And can you talk about the main differences, if there's any, between the novel and the show?
Yeah, we both really loved the book equally, which doesn't mean it should be adapted. Sometimes it means it shouldn't be adapted. But the character was so specific, and we could, I think, really feel how it could map out the story into a season. It's a novella, so we didn't want to cut anything from it, and we didn't. But we did have to add some things, which sort of were mostly taking characters that were in the book and wondering how they got that way and what they were doing when the book wasn't describing them. And then also, we wanted to create the show Sanctuary Moon, which Murderbot is obsessed with, and be able to see it, because we thought that'd be A, really fun, and B, as we were working on this, we were like wondering which sort of versions of sci-fi we were not going to be doing, and one of them was the space opera. And so it was really fun to be able to show that and have fun with that, but not have that be the main show.
Mm. And it is very fun because it is, of course, sci-fi, but there's a lot of comedy in it. And sometimes this is a very tricky balance to find, one between sci-fi and comedy.
Yeah.
It's very challenging. So can you talk about how you work in order to mix together these two genres?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the novels themselves are a really good guide to that. And I think that the thing was to treat the characters as though they were unaware that they were in a science fiction show, right? So it's kind of a comedy of manners in some ways, and it just happens to be set in the future in space. And to figure out what the show wasn't. So usually science fiction and comedy, it's like parody or a spoof or quite broad. And most science fiction that comes out is very, very serious, and everybody's thinking very seriously about everything that happens. Which is not to say that our characters don't think about things seriously, but it was always like, it's partly it's about casting the actors who understand what the plan is. And so people who knew that we were trying to get a very specific tone. And then it's kind of judging it in the editing room and figuring out when it goes too far in one direction or the other.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, following your answer, I also like to talk about the editing, because I think in order to achieve that specific kind of almost surreal comedy, I mean, I remember the first time there is the interview between David Dasmakian character and I think it's the second episode. I think the editing is so important because one line you add 1 second or you take 1 second and it doesn't have the same effect. So can you talk about how did you edit?
Yeah, well, so the first thing was we didn't want to pad it. It was very important to us this to be a half-hour show, as opposed to most sci-fi is an hour when it's on TV. But we were like, oh my God, that would really kill this, because to have sort of tension and character, we had to be compact. Our editor, John Korn, actually for many years edited Curb Your Enthusiasm, where he was taking sort of improvised footage and making that all work. So he just also has a really good ear for rhythm and comedy that's based in character. And in terms of the voiceover being part of it too, like Chris and I did a film called About a Boy, which had a lot of voiceover in it. And usually the rule of thumb in Hollywood is that voiceover is bad. It's just like it's a sign that people don't understand your movie. So you have to say, oh, they have to have some voiceover saying this giant spaceship is going to engulf the world in flames, And so once we got over the hurdle, of okay, we're going to really use voiceover because that's juxtaposing with how the character is acting in front of other people. That was a big part of it.
It's also very fun because in this case the voiceover goes against the tension of what's happening,
Yeah,
and the voiceover is the fun part of the story, which
yeah,
doesn't happen
yeah.
that often. Watching the episode, I actually realized that I was having a lot of fun because now that I think about, I don't see actually Alexander Skarsgard or Davis Dalsmagian in
Hmm.
so many comedy roles. So can you
Yeah.
talk about how do you had the idea to cast these actors for those roles?
Well, I mean, Alexander, we didn't have to think very much once it was clear that he wanted to do it. And you get to know him a bit, and you realize what a kind of eccentric, funny person he actually is. So a lot of his persona is actually quite different from what you would think about just looking at him. So something funny just comes with that anyway, because he's an oddball. Which is also true of David Dasmalchian. And I worked with him on a movie last year, and he's just well. He first of all, he's got tremendous range, but he's usually playing like a kind of a weirdo or a murderer. Although he was very funny in the Suicide Squad as Polka Dot Man. So
Yeah.
you can see him do all kinds of funny stuff. I think the key was for him was like we knew that there was going to be this emotional core to it as well.
They're both completely committed. Eventually acting is just playing pretend, and
Yeah.
some people will play pretend in such a way that, they're not breaking from it, and that's why they're funny.
And I was also thinking about the inspiration. Is there any classic of sci-fi
Hmm.
or any other movie that in some way started inspiring you, or you simply you just rewatched it when you started thinking about how to compose the visual side of Murderbot?
I mean, I think in terms of classic sci-fi, like Stanislav Lem's books, really feel like a pretty good match in terms of the sort of science fiction the world that it lives in.
It's
I
almost
mean,
more book
movies.
cover.
What's that?
I was saying a lot of it was book covers as opposed to necessarily.
Oh yeah, in terms of the visuals, the sort of the book covers of science fiction paperbacks in the 1980s, really, which was just so much fun. They're fun to look at, and we wanted a world that was going to be enjoyable to look at, as well as a believable kind of universe in and of itself. And in terms of movies, it's more like Billy Wilder or like The Graduate. These kind of comedies of manners or coming of age stories.
Yeah, we talked a lot about so much great sci-fi and sci-fi that we love. So you don't want to repeat that, but also if you're consciously rejecting it in too visible a way, then it becomes sweaty somehow. So
Hmm.
we're trying to figure out what is the sort of central thing, and it was kind of based on character. It was like, for instance, the habitat they're in would be extruded from some sort of ship, so it has to look very kind of like basic or modular. But these characters who are living in it are very creative, so they're putting graffiti on it, etc. Not necessarily
Hmm.
good graffiti, but that's what's lending color to it. So it was also just trying to really imagine what these characters would be doing. And then for Murderbot's costume, the fact that it's got a corporate logo built into the
Mhm.
mask was something that we hadn't, that we thought was interesting.
Absolutely. My time is up. Thank
Well,
you very
thank
much
you.
for the interview and congratulations for the series.
Oh,
Thank
that
you
was
so
fun.
much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.